welcome to another episode of Falling Upwards. It's sunny outside, and do you know who's also here that's of a very sunny disposition? It's Maddie Armstrong. Hello to my co-host, how you doing?
I can't believe it, man. I'm too hot in my room because there's the sun. You know, there's this line from Doctor Who which is just so funny to me, which no one else will find funny, but it's in this episode called Gridlock, and there's these like half cat people, and they've got these children, and they've been stuck underground for like years and years, and when finally the roof opens up and they finally get to fly out in their flying cars, the half cat human mum says to her children, "Kittens, it's the sun." And like every time, because you know the sun doesn't really shine in the north, every time the sun shines, me and my sister will reference that to each other, and that's just ringing in my head right now. Kittens.
Oh,
I am the kitten in awe of the sun.
Well, with that in mind, shall we skip on over to Mad News? What you got today, Maddie?
So I'm going to do a news read, and then you, Emma, have to guess which one of these is about Maddie.
Oh God. Okay.
So let's go. Bria's bamboozled. "What on earth is that thing?" cries the local northerner as son makes first appearance in 6 months. Hearty barista stops work to pat cute dog, gets sauce on its pristine white fur, apologises profusely to owner. And a mental wellbeing report ranks the UK as the second most miserable country in the world.
Is this a trick question where it's actually all three of them?
Emma, you stole my bit. Yes, I'm all of the above. But in case my manager hops on the podcast and is listening to this, it was my friend's dog, and she was very fine with it, so it's okay. Please don't get
These things can happen.
Yeah,
dogs can get mucky.
She was laughing about it. Also, son, what is that thing? I am the northerner, confused as to what this bright thing is. I forgot that the sky was meant to be blue. And then
mental health is difficult, innit?
Cost of living in it.
Yeah, very true.
Woo!
Well, in thought-provoking things, we have an amazing person on the lawn today. The playwright Amy Ung is here. She did a wonderful long pre-record with us, and we have to say thank you to her. She has her new play, Shanghai Dolls, opening on the 3rd of April at the Kiln Theatre. So, Maddie, we're ready. Shall we listen to what she has to say?
Yes, we should.
Hi, Amy. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Where are you right now? It's looking super sunny.
I'm in London.
Lovely. Well, we start all our little sessions on the lawn with our classic question. What is your favourite failure?
So, I took some clowning lessons, and I was an abysmal failure, but I don't think I'm very funny, but I had a great time. It's just one of those things where it's like the thing you're most scared of doing, but because I'm so much in my head. I really love how clowns, use their whole body and physicality to, tell stories and use really quite biting humor to to really set up people and point out the absurdity of the world. So anyway, but I found out I was so inflexible, so I couldn't do all the the physical things that they do. And it's funny, they have 7 stages, so the neutral stage is called the Teutonic stage because Germans are apparently really kind of neutral and non-expressive, and I think I kind of was stuck at the level most of the time. And but anyway, that was a fun failure.
What brought on you wanting to do clowning? That's a very specific thing to choose to want to try out.
Well, I co-wrote a show for Ice and Fire, which is a human rights theatre company, and we were commissioned to write a show on border controls by a philosopher at King's College London. But the thing is, our brief was she had a really radical philosophical thesis, which is that border controls are inherently undemocratic because it most affects people who haven't voted for them. And our brief was to take it to like Brexit voting places. And so the director was like, look, we have to do something to really get past those defenses. So we decided that clowning was the way to go. We had 4 clowns in a room, just really improvising and stuff. And it was just amazing, the stuff they came up with. And so I was like, wow, that's something I really want to do.
Wow.
And I've decided there's a reason why I'm a writer, not a clown. But, at least it was like I said, a fun failure.
That's kind of a flex, though, because imagine you failed at being a clown. So that means you're just instantly cool, right? You're not a clown. You failed at being a clown. That's a good failure, man. I didn't realize this was an art form. Like they had classes for it.
Oh my God, yeah, I've had clowning lessons. It's horrible.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, it's horrible. It's I had to for drama school. It's horrible.
It was some sort of university punishment.
No. Yeah, no, it's horrible. I feel like if you're really into like physical, like I don't like clowns to begin with. So having to then take clowning was just like I hated it.
Well, they're becoming a bit non-existent. Apart from like in 2016 where they all just came out.
Wait, where were you? The clowns just came out.
No, like, do you not remember the Killer Clowns?
No, I stay away from clowns, Maddie.
No, but this was all over the internet. Like, it wasn't
No.
even a Halloween thing. There were just clowns
No.
appearing everywhere.
Oh, God, no.
You need to look at the Killer
No.
Clowns of 2016. I can't believe you
No,
missed this cultural event.
I'm happy to just believe you. No.
This is so funny.
No.
Yeah, you would have hated it, though, because they were meant to be scary.
I see. I'm not scared of them. I just find them terribly unpleasant, and I don't really like their humor either.
Well, that's good because they are meant to be humorous for children. So that means you're grown. But yeah, no, classes and art. What is involved?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Like, there's a lot of physicality and timing involved with clowning. So like when Amy was talking about like flexibility and that kind of thing, like you do need a certain level of knowing how to move within your body and then move in the space, and it is difficult. It is difficult to like do well. I think people think it's just like throwing pies at each other, but like there are proper bona fide clowns that are masters at what they do. I don't watch them.
I'm thinking of in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, what's the main actor called?
Is that Dick Van Dyke?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, when they have to like pretend to be toys so that they don't get taken away or whatever. The lady pretends to be a music box lady, and then he pretends to be this sort of ragdolly clown type character, and he is tumbling all over the place. But it's actually quite fun to watch. So that comes into my head when I think of like movements of a clown.
Did you find it genuinely helped like bring more of a sense of what it meant to like have a comedic voice in plays? Did that help at least kind of add to that element of it, I suppose?
I think not so much a comedic sense, because I mean I do write comedy as well. So this was surprising for me. I think it was a different kind of humor though, do you know? And that I tend to have very much like wordplay humor or whatever, and it was just something about the absurdity of everyday life, and but how that aligns very much with like the philosophical absurdity of life in general.
Right.
I think it's also about being extremely emotional, but in a very controlled way. And I would have said I'm not trained to go into those extremes at like kind of the drop of a hat. Like when clowns, they like puncture a balloon and they start bawling, whatever, that kind of thing. I couldn't do any of that at all. So anyway, very untalented clown.
I love that.
When I was talking to her at the time, I was like, it's just great hearing it. But now hearing about the level of just low-key, oh my God, those were awful lessons that have just like re-embedded in my brain. My God. Horrendous. Part part of the reason I've been so looking forward to talking to you is I know you studied history at Balliol in Oxford, and I did history at Magdalen College in Oxford. So it's really cool speaking to a playwright that has spent so much time in and around history. How and why first did you decide to go into history as your studies, and then how has that eventually melded into you then becoming a playwright?
I mean, I grew up in Hong Kong, and it's not, and I think I always knew I wanted to be a playwright. I mean, the first time I watched a play after that was like, this is what I want to do. But it's not really a realistic career option in Hong Kong. I mean, it's so not a parent approved kind of path. And so my favorite subject at school was always history. And I think also because my dad, I mean, he loves history as well. He's not a professional historian, but I mean, he's, he'll read like, the 24 dynastic histories. That's his bedside reading. And he always liked the kind of quirky things in history, like people on the margin. And I think I took from him that like history is actually story after story after story. And so, yeah, I decided that the way to bridge my parents' disapproval of anything smacking of an artistic career, and so they wanted me to be kind of respectable. And my desire to be a playwright was to be a historian. And I'm actually really glad I went that route, rather than drama school or an MFA, because I feel like, I mean, I think what, and you would know it, studying history in Oxford, it's not, I mean, there's a real respect, I think, for like empiricism and archival research. So it's different from history at Cambridge, what I would say is more structural and theoretical. And so I think there was a real, I loved being in the archives. Like I loved reading people's letters and diaries. And, like you read people's diaries from World War I, and they genuinely have no idea, who's going to win and what's going to happen the next day. And of course, but it's just that day by day and seeing people's choices, how that affects the trajectory of history. I don't think I would have gotten that from just studying other plays. But I mean, arguably, I think that plays, as opposed to novels or poems or other forms of the written word, is about fate and destiny, I guess, unfolding moment by moment. By that, I don't mean, the gods dictate that one country's going to win or one person's going to, sleep with his mother and kill his father, like an Oedipus. Yeah, I think I mean that confluence of like their personality, so that the structure of the personality compelling the choices they make at the confluence of big historical forces, like, so, the industrialization or, like a famine, a bad winter with like bad harvest. So like all these coming together and you see that unfolding beat by beat. So, I mean, that's, I think, is what I've really gained from history, as well as the fact, I mean, that, Isaiah Berlin was at Oxford at All Souls, for a very long time, philosopher, and he was very fond of quoting Kant about, out of the crooked timber of humanity, no straight planks were ever made. And I do feel like you get that as a historian. Like, people are so weird. When you read their private letters and diaries, and like, what were they thinking? And I think that's really grounded me in kind of the individuality of people and that sense of like every choice is consequential. Yeah, it's not like I was doing history as a second best. I think things have just evolved naturally.
That connection between history and storytelling, I love history so much, and I still work with historians. One of my best friends is still at Oxford studying history. I think he's going to be there forever.
I mean, it's a nice life, because I managed to hang around forever.
It is. History is ultimately just, they are real life stories, and I like that what you said about people being so weird, because often the truth is stranger than history. No matter what stories we come up with as writers, actually nothing tops what a lot of people in real life decided to do. And something that I talk about often with a close friend of mine who is also a historian is how we take the reality of history and then choose and try to connect it with the masses, with the wider audience, that sometimes would be so far removed from these stories, from these realities that happened. when you go into creating any play, and you are such a pretty prolific playwright already, how do you decide what story, what theme, what period of time it is that you're focusing on?
I mean, I don't ever start off with, this is a theme I want to explore, and I'll find a story that fits. It really is I think that there's a hook, so you're putting out one playwright, Ato Fugard, the South African playwright, he said it's like fishing, put out your rod, and then suddenly something starts tugging. So I can give you concrete examples. So I was writing a play about Margaret Thatcher in Hong Kong, and which I've been writing forever, but still hasn't been produced yet. And things have been changing a lot in Hong Kong. But I think how it really congealed together was I just found in the National Archives this document that when she went to China to meet Deng Xiaoping, she was like, she tried to choose like a cheap menu, so like they had 3 different menus at the People's Hall, because it's the Great Hall of the People. There's a custom that like the welcoming banquet is paid for by the host country, and the farewell banquet is paid for by the guest country. And there were 3 different menus, and so like, of course, the top menu was like with shark's fin and sea slugs, all the like expensive Chinese things. And she was like, I am not spending taxpayers' money on like shark's fin and sea slugs, And her investor was like, oh my God, like we are, Great Britain is, one of the major powers of the world. How can you go for this cheap menu? It's for like places like Albania, And she was like, she was very adamant. And then, but then, despite wanting to save taxpayers' money, she decided to ship out the silver, like the Navy silver, all these trophies and everything from like all the great British battles, ship them out to China so she could lay it at her banquet. And the master was kind of like, that is costing a lot more than if you just paid for the bloody sharks, So it was like, that was like, it's just so indicative of a character, and it just revealed the way she was approaching these negotiations. So, I mean, that was, when I say people are deeply weird, I was like, that was like this flash, I was like, oh, I could see how it just suddenly brought it to life. Yeah.
Well, how did you then come up with the focus for Shanghai Dolls? How did that come into being?
So, because I grew up in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong's really a city of refugees from the Cultural Revolution, or the children of refugees of the Cultural Revolution. I think I'd always grown up like, hearing that this was this terrible event that happened. People had to kneel on broken glass, all the artists and intellectuals and people wearing glasses basically were persecuted, and there was this evil woman, and that was all. But then I just came across this, actually when I was doing research for the Thatcher play, just came across this nugget that like Jiang Qing, whom I had heard was like this kind of untalented starlet, movie starlet that managed to seduce Mao, that she had actually become famous by playing Nora in A Doll's House. And I was like, that's not a trivial part. That's not a starlet, like
no
kind of romantic comedy part. That's major league. And so I was like, that's remarkable. So I just started digging around like one does, I kind of feel like especially when you're working on one play, it's always really fun to to research has nothing to do with it. This is procrastination. And I came across these collection of articles that she had written for Shanghai papers in the 30s. And I was reading them and I was like, oh my gosh, I 100% agree with every one of them. I'm a psychopath. I'm like her. But she was arguing for things like, well, she was a feminist. She was like, this play, A Doll's House is so important because we women are stuck in this feudal society where like all our rights are dictated by men, and we have to emancipate ourselves. But we have to go beyond Ibsen because he never provided an answer of what you do once you leave your husband's house. Like, if the wider society doesn't let you earn a living. So it was just so it was so kind of rational, but also passionate. And it was such an emphasis on female solidarity to And then I was reading some of her trial things and the witnesses that have been persecuted by her. And one guy went on her in the 30s, had the sentence. He said Lan Ping, which was her stage name, Blue Apple in the 30s. I said Lan Ping did not have to become Jiang Qing. I was like, okay, that's my play, So because I'm never interested in. I don't believe that people are kind of born evil. So I want to know what forces in society made this emancipated feminist like the butcher of the Cultural Revolution.
Amazing, incredible. Something that has stood out to me across your career, and even from you talking about your process and what you're developing with the Thatcher play, is really that focus on women and women in history. And something that has always stood out to me through studying history and then through seeing friends that have focused on gender history is how difficult it is to sometimes piece together these women's lives because of how their stories have been hidden, how they've been kind of obscured by varying different forces. It sounds like actually your research for Shanghai Dolls was quite fruitful, but have you found during your career that bringing to light some of these stories has been quite difficult in terms of getting the material, getting all the information that you need?
Yeah, no, absolutely, because as you know, archives are curated by the victors. What gets destroyed, what's kept, and even the things that are kept, the lens through which they're written. So I remember taking a Commonwealth history seminar at Oxford, and we were told that when we go to the archives, if you wanted, for example, to study Indian independence, you're going to have to look it up under the keyword of sedition and terrorism, because of course that's what the British colonial authorities, of course, we're not going to call them freedom fighters. It was under sedition.
Wow.
So there is a sense of reading against the grain, of the reading against the intent of the people who created the archive. But I would say it's mostly silences, so if you're really if you're trying to understand the subjectivity of women in history, I mean, it's so mediated by the men around them,
right?
And I mean, I don't know if you ever came across this book called The Cheese and the Worms.
I love The Cheese and the Worms. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So that was like one of those really like mind blowing books for me. That this guy came across these Inquisition trials, and of course that was actually one of the few places where you could find the voices of ordinary people. And of course it was completely biased because it was just whatever the judge was recording. But yeah, for people who don't know the book, A, you should go read it. So B, it was just about this, I guess, a miller, a miller who was also kind of a philosopher, a homespun philosopher, autodidact, taught himself, had somehow come up, rejected all the church's explanations of, the divine creation of the earth. And he thought that, the whole earth, was like cheese, or maybe it was a moon that was like cheese, and we were all like worms that like had crawled out of this cheese when this cheese was rotting. As in, like, he was trying to find a materialistic and a scientific reason for the existence of creation, that rejected the teachings of the church. And in the 16th century, I think, or 17th century, it's been a while since I read the book. So anyway, early modern Italy, and Carlo Ginzburg, who's a very anthropological kind of historian, say, was using this to show that there was like a whole substratum of lower class, like an autonomous intellectual tradition, if you would call it, or if you could call it that, of people that were like not the priests and not the humanists and not the Renaissance artists, and so folk wisdom, I suppose, and I'm always looking to access that, and of course you have to be really creative to find sources. And so I've written actually in the playtest an essay about how I would approach the subject of Shanghai Dolls as a historian and as a playwright. So I think actually my conclusion was that my process hasn't been that different. I think what is different is that if I'd been writing in this history, I would have said it is plausible that this happened. It could have been, you know, my hypothesis is that, and then in the play I just went and like this is what happened. So I didn't hedge it. I have not, and I don't. When I write historical plays, I do not contravene known facts. I mean, I take a lot of liberty with the form, so I would love magic realism because I feel it's an artistic form that responds to historical trauma. So especially of people that have historically felt very powerless and lack agency, it's a way of reimagining their history. But I still think that unless it's very clearly a counterfactual history, like, what would have happened if Hitler won kind of thing, I don't think you can just be like, oh, wow, this is a really inconvenient fact. Mao had, 2 wives before Jiang Qing, I'm going to make her his 8th wife. You can't do that.
With stuff like mystery and everything, people think there's such a clear A to B answer to the reasons behind something is done. That there's no weird factors in there. But in real life, when there is an actual mystery, a real mystery solved, it's always nothing that you would expect. It's a weird human thing. People think everything's predetermined, everything is just concocted, but it's really not. The choices we make are so spontaneous and beautifully random, and we just do things for the sake of it. Like, I haven't read the entirety, but I'm sure many people have. But when I was in school, I read a little bit of Anne Frank's diary. And I remember when the first thing she talked about was a cake of some kind. And I just thought that is such a lovely but random thing for a young girl to just pop in a diary. She wasn't thinking, I'm going to write this as a recount for all the people in the future to read about, to know. She was just writing her diary. And she decided to write about cake. And I've done similar when I used to write my diary. I would just put stuff in because I felt like it.
You're telling me that you don't judge whether your actions made narrative sense, Maddie?
Not at all. I think fiction and how we decide that something is good or not is very limiting. Because it's like people want closure in a story. People want everything to be wrapped up, and something that ends abruptly, or you never find out all the different things about the whys and what's and whatever in a story, they think it's bad or poorly written. But I think that limits the fiction that can be put out there, fiction that might mimic life much more realistically and might still be a beautiful thing for people to enjoy and just sit with for a couple hours,
I have one friend where if ever I go to the cinema with her and the ending's not wrapped up, she'll be like, what? Like it will stay in her brain for like days. Whereas there's some kind of comfort in it almost not being completely tied up perfectly in a bow. Just because that does feel a bit like life. Sometimes it is just that unpredictable.
Even as a kid, I never felt totally comfortable with the phrase "and they lived happily ever after," because that feels like a full stop.
No,
it doesn't fill me with images of them literally living happily and continuing going on. It just makes me think that they've stopped. They're not living anymore, really.
That's like, when people get married and they say, oh, now I've got my happy ending.
No.
And I'm always like, but that you have life beyond that.
So much more things to do. Places to go. So it's genuinely one of the first times I've ever come across this phrase microhistory, which I love, because when we think about history, it's always about like all the notable events. And I didn't have a particular interest in history in school. That's why I didn't take it for GCSE. But it never occurred to me that the smaller stories that are still just as fascinating still exist out there.
And often, if you look at like what archaeologists do as well, you know, sometimes they have such few fragments to go off to try and piece together what somebody's life or type of existence they could have had. You know, it might just be like, what condition was their teeth in? And through looking at their teeth, you get a sense, okay, what did they eat? How good was their diet? That's all really important. We get a sense of like, did they eat well? How much famine did they have to go through? But we'd never be able to find that out otherwise. It's just literally their dental records. But it's so important to discover these things, because if not, you might have, you know, some very crooked, I don't know, sheriff, whatever, and we'll have his written record of, oh, the harvest was plentiful this year, did really well, lots of grain. And then actually when you find people's bodies from that period, no, maybe they it was terrible. But then that gives us a sense of that kind of relationship. All of it is very, yeah. So I love microhistory. Microhistory is very important.
Do you reckon in like 400 years, you and I could be a little microhistory?
What was it like for young people who were tired constantly?
What if the entirety of like the Internet Archive somehow was destroyed, but the only thing was left was our podcast episodes?
Oh God.
What if that was all people had to go on? Can you imagine?
Wait, if the entire internet history was destroyed, how would our podcast episodes have survived?
It just did. It, you know.
That's terrifying.
It's like when solar stuff affects computers. It affects like a little bit or something.
You know, like, you know how Labubus are very popular now? I think I mentioned my Labubu in an episode the other day. Like, can you imagine if in like 5,000 years some aliens came down? Very little of humanity is left, but they find thousands of these Labubu dolls that haven't yet been decomposed. And like, oh my God,
they worship these
rabbit-like God.
That is basically what like archaeology is like, though, isn't it? People can just make guesses, but they might be very wrong.
That's the only thing people can do.
Yeah.
Like I saw today, there was somebody had reposted what is often called the first ever complaint letter, and it's from a buyer, and it's to do with copper. And it's amazing because you're like, even back then, customer service was crap.
People love to complain.
Even back then, thousands of years later, customer service has not improved.
I love that.
We share this lived experience. Whenever you feel alone, remember, thousands of years ago, people also felt the same.
Yeah. Oh my word, I had to like back and forth with the customer service of this train service for like over a month just so I could get some sort of compensation for like a 2-hour delayed train ride that they promised all of us, and it was a packed train and blah blah blah. I think I even mentioned it in an episode recently. It was that journey, and I only just got a fraction back after. And you know how bad it was? They don't even know. They're not even aware that they've already talked to me. So I had someone else emailing me being like, "Dear Miss Armstrong, we are so sorry we've not got back to you yet. Do you still want to la 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 la?" And I'm like, I've already had this dealt with, love. So I don't know how the communication is going on, but my thing should be ticked in your system. But I didn't respond because, you know.
See, you follow a proud tradition dating back thousands of years of communication problems with customer complaints.
Yeah.
We haven't moved along as a species that much, have we?
No, because as much as
really
things
haven't.
change, they also stay the same.
How much do you feel then that, say, when we look at adaptations of things that happened in history, how much do you think that it is okay to make up or take great liberties with what happened for the sake of actually getting people interested in what happened, versus actually sticking more to the fact, even if it's less titillating, so that people aren't learning incorrect information.
I wouldn't want to lay down like sort of guidelines for like everybody. I think, like I love Amadeus, the play, even though apparently it contravenes like 2 million facts about Mozart and Salieri. But, so I mean, I would not want to have that play. But for myself, I would not contradict an established fact, and I might compress time a bit. But I also feel though that doesn't restrain my freedom, because I feel when I'm writing a play, I always want to know what is the truth of what happened. So my research question, or my central dramatic question in Shanghai Dolls, was why did Lan Ping become Jiang Jing? Why did she, go from like emancipated artist to like butcher? So, and obviously, well, especially the archives are sealed. Can you imagine Communist Party archives? Of course, I wasn't ever going to be let close to them, and so you're just dependent on printed primary sources. So what she wrote and published, and the trial transcripts are really important, the speeches. But, what she did day to day, no one knows. Especially now, the witnesses are all dead. Maybe if I'd done this 20 years ago, some octogenarians would still have been alive. But yeah, so then I did feel a great freedom to make up stuff. And, but also always within that. I mean, what I love about, I think for me, the most successful thing about like historical narratives, whether they're, academic historical narratives or stories, is when past is, it's just past is a foreign country. They don't speak and live like 21st century people, that they are recognizably like us, as in we're human beings, and we share certain things and ways of thinking, but also some of the assumptions are so alien. So even when I'm making up things, I'm really aware of the thickness of history and how their preoccupations are so different from ours. As I do feel like, I don't actually believe that learning history will help you like predict the future, but I feel like if you don't know history, you can't understand the present. So, and I'm always interested in knowing what ways of thinking have we excluded from the present day that were very much alive in the past, and what does this tell us about now? So I think if I didn't, I wasn't trying so hard to make the past to honor, I guess, the strangeness and the otherness of the past, it just wouldn't work. My plays just wouldn't work.
Obviously, we live in such a fraught political time as well, especially considering how people perceive China, people perceive Asian countries. How do you then approach a subject like this in a way that is, I think I get a sense from your process anyway, but how do you approach it in a way that is politically sensitive while still telling the truth of what happened?
So I think so it's the kind of at least 3 layers to that question. So I mean, yeah, we are in a age of geopolitical strain, and I do get very angry when I read the newspapers and China's portrayed as this kind of alien, monstrous regime. Just kind of like and even like in the Financial Times, like an article on like China looking for rare minerals around the world. It's like, oh, they're spreading their tentacles around. I'm like, well, then what are you going to say about Trump, like his tentacles? So there's that. So I'm always really aware that I have a responsibility not to other China that way. So I'm always trying to tell it from the inside, in a sense, so I mean, I think there are terrible things that have happened in Chinese history, like the Cultural Revolution and the Great Famine that preceded it. But, I want to tell that story as a tale of human error and also human choice, not as if like, oh, they did this because they're inhuman and they have placed no value in human life, or, whatever, those assumptions are. So that's one level, is like my responsibility in this particular geopolitical moment of time with a heightened tension between West and China. I mean, the second level, of course, is that I am from Hong Kong, and I visit very often, and the Cultural Revolution is a topic of great sensitivity. So I mean, this play will not be produced anywhere in China or Hong Kong. So yeah, I've had to be careful about like what I say, in the play. Like it's been tricky, but I also feel like some things really need to be discussed. And so I'm very aware that I'm also writing this play for the diaspora, these plays can't be seen in China and Hong Kong. So, if you want to really engage with it, you have to be abroad in some ways. So there's that.
What are you enjoying right now in particular that you'd like to share with other people?
Oh, just the weather, I was actually thinking of taking out the kayaks again, and because we live quite close to the Thames, and so I just love to do that. Yeah.
So you like kayak? You'll just row on kayak on the river?
Yeah, I'm really bad at it.
Wow.
But yeah, but it's really peaceful, and it just makes you feel better about living in Zone 6, I think.
Yeah.
You have the river right at the door. So
Nice.
I mean, I grew up in the middle of a city, so I do miss, being in central London. But yeah, the kayak makes up a lot. I have a dog, and so I go running with him along the river, and so that's been really. It has become more and more fun ever since weather's turned nice. So yeah, so I think it's mostly that. Yeah. It's funny, like when, I grew up in Hong Kong and it's a subtropical place. I never felt an impulse to go out and like soak up the sunshine. It's kind of like look at the sun and be like, oh my God, I need air conditioning. But yeah, it's just different.
Yeah. I suppose that's because like from my trips to Hong Kong, which admittedly is probably therefore nothing in comparison to your knowledge, the greenery, the green spaces feel very different. Whereas I can imagine in Kingston, kind of like you're saying, having the river nearby, having those running paths nearby, it just is different from the kind of sun and nature that you would have in Hong Kong.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hong Kong, people don't realize this, but 70% of it is actually uninhabited. It's protected land, and it's really mountainous, and a lot of it is like abandoned islands. But then it's really quite tropical, and there are like snakes and like, really weird looking spiders. I once went hiking, and then the person in front of me was like, you just walked underneath like a spider, like kind of this big, was as big as it did. But it had a web on top, and I wasn't like looking up, just like so
my gosh.
that. So it's orange does feel different.
Yeah.
But I'm not the only Hong Konger that really enjoys, being out here in like what feels like a kind of tamer and safer environment. And Wednesday morning, like I see this group of older Hong Kong people. I think they're all in their 70s, and they're all like kind of vigorously strolling up and down the river, and then they end up in this this Chinese restaurant called Mr. Panda and Ham, which is pretty good. I only tried it because I saw this group going like all the time, and I was like, maybe it's not just a takeaway, and it actually is. Yeah, that's also the other thing about living in Kingston is that there is just so much Cantonese that you hear on the streets now.
Right.
Yeah, it just makes me feel a little bit less homesick.
Oh, we've got both the weather recommendation and a restaurant recommendation from you, which is pretty epic, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just my local one. I mean, obviously, I go to Chinatown so much, and yeah, I'm just waiting for some enterprising Hong Kong person to like start like a really good dim sum restaurant here in Kingston. And like that would just be like you're just raking the money,
Yeah.
So
there isn't a good dim sum place that you would recommend in Kingston at this point. No, you'd go to Chinatown if you wanted dim sum.
Yeah, I always do. I mean, Chinatown's not just food, but you have like all those tiny desserts, the like rubber waffle and all the bakeries, and I get my hair cut and all those groceries, wholesale place behind Gerrard Street, small alley where they it's called noodle factory, and
Yeah.
I think they sell it mostly to restaurants, but it's next to this wholesale seafood place. And I mean, the stuff there is superb. It's handmade noodles. So it's like this one-stop shop for a lot of things. And but I think that's going to change. I think I think there are going to be nuclei like that springing up all over. Yeah, it's
Nice.
She is so lovely. She'll really just open up any story and just.
Kayaking.
Have you ever been kayaking?
No, I just think I'd be dreadful at it.
It's really easy, actually. And you don't need any strength for it.
No, I've tried punting before.
Is that like paddleboarding?
That's like you know, like a bit like in Venice with gondolas, and they kind of push the boat along. Like
You're sat down or stood up?
You're stood
So
up.
that's like paddleboarding then.
Is it? Okay, sure.
Am I thinking of the
Sure.
right one?
Yeah, no, that was not for me.
Anyway.
Whereas you like your rowing.
Yeah, well, going to the Lake District, growing up going there, I experienced quite a lot of boating.
Oh, nice.
Rowing boats. I'll send you this picture. There's a picture of my dad rowing toddler me with my little chubby face and the life jacket on it next to my sister in this boat across Grasmere Lake. Kayaking's a lot of fun, but you do get wet thighs.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bodyboarding is
Yeah,
fun.
that big spider story as well.
Yeah.
That's not
Oh my
fun.
word, no. So I hate spiders so much. I was like, when she first was like, I'd like to exchange the weather. And I'm like, yep, you can exchange subtropical weather with me anytime you like. But then she mentioned the spiders, and I'm like, maybe not so much.
Peace out.
Yeah,
No.
bye. Because I don't mind snakes at all. I love snakes, but I cannot stand spiders or crustaceans because they're kind of like spiders. I can tolerate a crab, but I don't want it anywhere near me.
What would you like to contribute to the exchange this week, Maz?
So on the complete other end of the scale of like sensory hardness, that's such a weird way to introduce things. Sure. I went to the O2 Arena recently, and there was this hat store. I think it was called Julie Rose. And I got this humongous fluffy bucket hat, and when I say bucket hat, it's like more than a bucket hat. It's like it's a bit longer, and if I put it on just normally, it will cover my eyes and pretty much my nose. But I'm telling you, it is the equivalent of a coat of how much it'll keep you warm. Like, I genuinely think I could just walk out in a cami and this hat and trousers, and be warm enough. Let me show you.
Okay.
Look at it.
Oh my god, that's huge. That is huge.
It's so comfy. It is huge.
That is actually huge. That's, for anyone who can't see, it is basically a massive, huge, fluffy hat. That is huge. We were talking about sofas eating me last episode, but that hat is engulfing your head.
Do I have a small head?
That's amazing. No.
Is it a medium-sized head?
I feel like you just have a normal, average-sized head.
But this thing, it will swallow you, but it's so comforting. And like, as someone that experiences sensory issues sometimes, it just takes me out of the world a bit. Like, honestly, it softens sound because it will cover your ears, so that's nice and comforting. And also, if you don't want to see like half of the things going on around you, you can just pull it so that all you can see is people's feet. And that's comforting
nice
as well.
Nice.
So I genuinely recommend these large fluffy bucket hats.
A big fluffy hat.
My one is grey, but they come in all sorts of colours, and they're just lovely. It's a good quality purchase.
I would like to contribute. I think Maddie's seen this already, but I managed to eat at a place the other day that I've always wanted to eat at, called Pick and Cheese, and it's basically a cheese conveyor belt restaurant. And it was like the greatest. I had to rush the meal because I was like in between meetings, and it was like the greatest 45 minutes of my life. And I was actually, I didn't realize so much cheese could make me so full, but it was amazing. So I recommend that everyone go. Unless you're like lactose intolerant, in which case absolutely don't go.
What cheeses did they have?
So I actually have. They have about maybe about 25 different cheeses.
Okay.
And they come on on these little trays. Like if you've been to your sushi, it's like that. And they've got like a little pairing with the cheese.
Oh my
And
word.
it's just amazing.
Oh,
So if you love cheese,
you're making my mouth water.
that is the place to go.
I love cheese, man.
And they're all all the cheeses are sourced in the UK. So like, for example, number 9, the Lowfields Lancashire, is sourced in Roger Cowgill, Yorkshire.
But that means that wait, did they have what's it called?
So like even the mozzarella is sourced from a place made in London.
What's the white fluffy cheese? Feta. Oh my word. I'm so bad with words. But like feta, which was beautiful in Greece, it's not that fun in the UK. So how was the feta?
They don't do feta.
Well, there you go.
But they have other different types of cheese. It's a very good cheese place.
It's rather saddening they don't have feta. Can't lie. Did they have Gouda? That's a fun one.
They do,
Ooh.
and the Gouda was made in Gill Spearing in Cornwall.
Fun.
And they paired it with clotted cream fudge, which I want to try next time that I'm there. But after 5 plates, I was capped out. I was like, I'm too full. I could actually just explode.
Can you take me there? Yeah. I know you've already been and experienced it, but I really want to try
I will go as many times as needs be. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Sounds fab.
Yeah. What would you like your sign-off message to be?
Come watch my play and come watch with questions, so every play I write, I want to open a conversation rather than close it off. So, I'd love for that to happen. And also eat lots of cake. We're in Tech Week and I think we're living off just caffeine and sugar at this point.
I love that. Eat lots of cake. Do you have a favorite cake? Do you have a cake recommendation?
Oh, I have so many. I really love cake. But obviously Asian, I love pandan cake. So pandan chiffon cake is one of my favorite things. I always get it at Chinatown, but I also really like any cake with red bean in it. So one of the really wonderful things about Chinatown the last 3-4 years, I'd say, is that there are these specialist dessert places that have sprung up, and it's and it's these very fusion-y cakes. So it's not just all matcha; it's also ubi from the Philippines, and there's loads of red bean stuff. And then I was really astonished. Just a month ago, I saw on Shaftesbury Avenue that a honeymoon dessert has opened up, and it's a chain in Hong Kong.
Are you being serious? Is it actually? One of my core memories from Hong Kong is eating at a honeymoon cafe. Oh my goodness! Wow.
Yeah, the font looks the same, the logo looks the same. So of course you can compare. I was like, wow. But I looked at the menu; they didn't have. One of the things I really love durian. I mean, I realized that this is very divisive.
That's controversial.
Yes. Honeymoon in Hong Kong is quite famous for having all these dessert pancakes, durian pancakes, and durian sweet sago puddings and things like that. They did not have that, but I can kind of understand why they didn't have that. You're going to have a very small subset of very fervent customers if you're serving durian dessert.
You know what? This is the country where people love Marmite, which I don't understand either. So if anybody might have the boldness to try out durian, I feel like this might be the country for it.
Do you think? I mean, even I've stopped buying it because my kids and husband, they just kind of run to the windows and gag.
You sound like my mum. My mum loves durian. She loves it. Me and my dad can't at all. But every time there's something durian, we'll get it for her because we know she loves it so much, and then we'll just leave the room so that she can enjoy it.
I actually also don't know how to bring it home. Can you imagine of the tube? I suppose it might be really useful.
To be fair, if it's something like a durian pancake or a pastry, they're usually quite packaged. I feel like you could.
They are very packaged, but a fresh durian, because I've noticed that they actually. I saw the kind of golden pillow from Thailand. They were actually selling those in Chinatown, and those are quite premium ones. Yeah.
Right. Right.
That was
Oh
really
my gosh.
tempting, but I was like, I'll have to eat an entire durian by myself in Chinatown. But there's no way I could bring it back on public transport or an Uber. Yeah.
I have to say, your mention of pandan chiffon cake, that is one of my favorite cakes. I like ask for that every
Yeah.
year for my birthday. It's epic. It's amazing. It's so light.
And it's actually quite hard to make. It's hard to make because
Yes.
it's so much beating.
Yeah.
So we've tried it a few times at home. It's not, yeah. So
Wow.
I made one that was like pandan with like red bean paste in the middle. It was quite good, but didn't have that lightness.
Right.
Because, you know,
You need like
Yeah.
so much air whipped into it for like the texture. Yeah.
yeah, but I do quite like baking because it's, you know, when you're writing a play, it takes so long. And I feel like a cake, you don't have a first draft cake. You just go straight to final draft and then.
So you like when you write, you'll use the baking to like take your time, take your mind off things.
Yeah, I don't even know what to take my mind off things. It's just, you know, there's it's just to eat it. It's just I'm just craving and a reward for like all this artwork.
Oh, that's lovely. I thought you would appreciate all the dessert cake chat.
I'm so hungry right now.
As our resident dessert fan.
Yeah. I've never tried a durian.
Oh.
And
Oh.
isn't that a fruit in Animal Crossing?
Oh.
Yeah, it is. That's how I know it.
Or is it a lychee?
No, I think they have durian in. At
Do
least
they
have it in New
actually?
Leaf. Yeah, it's like yellow
Oh,
and spiky,
God.
right?
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah, they have it. I didn't know it was a stinky fruit.
Okay. Do you know how stinky it is? In certain Asian countries, you are banned from taking it into certain establishments
I love that.
and on certain like transport because it is that
Intrusive.
pungent.
I love that. Oh, I have to try it now.
Yeah, that's such a polite way of putting it. It is so I actually, you know what? I don't think it's as bad as some people find it, but it's still strong enough for me to put me off eating it. Because you know, like we obviously we smell as we eat, right?
Yeah.
So it's not so strong that like some people genuinely like gag and throw up. It's not so strong that I'll do that, but it will put me off eating it.
Oh, what does it smell like?
It's like rotting fruit.
Oh.
It's not a nice smell. It's the closest thing to Marmite I know in this. Yeah, it's like that. It's like you either love it, people either love it, or they like hate it.
I do sometimes have a bit of an unconventional taste in food.
So you might like
because
it.
I like sprouts and I like pineapple on pizza.
There we go.
And people hate that stuff. But you said that your mum really likes it.
She loves it.
And we know that I have something in common with love of food with your mum.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about this now.
You might,
I
yeah.
wonder if I'd actually like it.
My mum loves it, and the only reason she doesn't buy often is because she knows, much like Amy, it will just be her.
You just have to leave the room. I love that.
Because it's so strong. Wait, so they've put here, its smell is similar to, has often been likened to raw sewage, rotting onions, or even stale vomit, although others find it pleasantly sweet.
Sewage.
So you genuinely either love it or it makes you want to hate everything. Yeah.
The thing is, right, I have a conditioner that tastes, oh my word, that smells. I don't mean taste, I meant smells. That smells just like public toilets, in my opinion. You know that those specific toilets where you have to give them like 20p, and they've got the metal. Is this just a northern thing? They've got the metal gates, and you've got to push through, and the toilets are always made of metal, and they're kind of horrible.
Right.
And they always have that one specific smell. I have a conditioner that smells just like that for some reason. But
Right.
if I like forget about what I think public toilets smell like, it would probably be a nice smell. It's all contextual. Something,
That's true.
you know?
It like triggers you.
Yeah. Like something that could be a horrible smell might be a lovely smell in another environment. It's pretty much the same smell, but because of the context, your brain decides whether you're going to retch or you're going to take a deep breath, So yeah, food for thought. Food for thought.
Maybe you might love it.
We'll see.
Maybe you might love it.
I do have a very sensitive nose though, so
What would you like your sign-off message to be today, Maddie?
don't just wash your hands after petting dogs. Wash your hands before petting dogs so you don't get sauce on them.
And wash your hands before eating.
Yeah, that's true.
Can I piggyback on us? Wash your hands before eating. Wash your hands more. I feel like COVID taught us all that most of us don't wash our hands long enough,
Yeah.
which was slightly scary.
But I've never like touched things in public. I've always been a sleeve toucher. And no matter what number I need to do in the toilets, I will never sit on it. Never ever. If I have to have a thigh workout, I will, but I will not sit on a toilet, a public toilet. I just cannot.
Have you never taken like toilet tissue and put it on the seat to like as a barrier? No?
It's still not enough for me.
Wow.
I will just squat.
But also based, because I sometimes, if the toilet feels too dirty, I also won't. Yeah.
Also, some
Public toilets, it's potluck, man.
some public toilets are just holes in the ground. Can't sit on that, can you?
Okay. I know my sign-off message was wash your hands, but I'll end with this anecdote. When, like, there are lots of loos in Southeast Asia that are obviously holes in the ground.
Yeah.
And I remember being like 7 and I was traveling with my dad, so my mum wasn't there. And we had to stop at a gas station somewhere in Malaysia. I can't remember where. And I walked in and it's like my earliest memory of a hole in the ground toilet. And I was little, right? I mean, I'm still small now. And I was even smaller back then. And the hole's quite wide. And I remember just like, because my dad couldn't go into the toilet, he was waiting outside. So I was just like, Maddie has her hand over over her mouth for anyone who can't see.
I'm anticipating.
I was just like, what do I do? And what follows is the most nerve-wracking, probably 30 seconds, as I'm like, literally my tiptoes are like on either side of the hole as I do. I can't even remember what number I was doing as I went to the loo and then like got up. And I remember going outside and saying to my dad, like, Dad, I thought I was going to fall into the hole. It was so scary. I thought I was going to fall into the hole.
I thought you were going to tell me that you fell in.
Young me thought I was going to fall in.
Oh, thank goodness.
It was scary.
We would have lost you forever. We never would have seen Emma again.
In that loo. Because they are quite large. I've seen now sometimes they have like a baby seat you can put on top so that like it's easier for your kid. But it's quite a large. My legs did not have that kind of squatting, ability then. It's difficult.
Falling upwards, guys.
Yeah, so wash your hands, everyone. Well, the amazing play Shanghai Dolls opens on the 3rd of April. It'll be out already by the time you listen to this, so please go and check it out. It's in the Kiln Theatre in London, written by the lovely Amy Ung that took the time out to come onto the lawn today. So thank you very much to her, and thank you again for listening to another episode of Falling Upwards.
Bye!